Hello everybody, welcome back to Bentley House. I'm Ara, and welcome back to another episode in Addams October. About a month ago, I got a comment from Jato Alworth asking if I could show how I created my electric chair for my Addams family. Now I made this before I actually started my YouTube channel, so I didn't make a video over it, so that's what I'm doing now for those of you who might be interested in creating it. The materials I'm using for this is a flat plank of basswood that is a 1/16 inch thick. I'm using a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch square dowel, and then I'm also using this piece of wood, which is a 1/4 inch by an 1/8 inch dowel. And for all of this, I'm going to be using my easy cutter tool to make it easy to cut these pieces and create the chair. I'm also going to be using tacky glue to put it all together. I'm going to start out by creating the base of the chair, which is made out of 6 pieces cut from my 1/4 inch square dowel, and all of these pieces are going to be 2.5 inches long. I need 2 more pieces to finish off the base, and those are going to be from the same 1/4 inch square dowel, and they're going to each be cut at 1 3/4 inches long. So what I should have is my 6 longer pieces in the center and the 2 shorter pieces on the side. To give this chair a very old, worn look, I'm going to make sure that before I glue any of these pieces together that I sand them and make them look like they've worn down over time. I'm going to use tacky glue to glue each of the longer pieces together, and I'm going to try and make sure that I line them up as best as possible. I realized after watching this back I did not line them up the best for this, but in the end it's supposed to be kind of an older chair, so it's okay if it's not absolutely perfect. I know I say that in every video, but really it's fine. I'm also going to line up the shorter pieces so that they match up in the front to where there is a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch gap. This is where one of the legs of the chair is going to go, so I'm using a small piece of that 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch dowel to make sure that there is an appropriately sized gap for the future leg of the chair. I'm going to do that on both sides for the base. Now this piece should be completely glued together and be a solid base for the chair to be built on. Before I continue on, I want to trace the base onto my plank of wood. Again, this piece of wood is a 1/16 inch thick. You can get a thicker piece if you like, because I end up doubling up this plank of wood to make it a little bit thicker, but this is what I already had. I am going to make the back of this chair a little bit shorter, and I'm just taking off a 1/4 inch, about a 1/4 inch off the back, so that it's not as long as the base, and you'll see why in a bit. Now I'm just going to cut that piece off with my X-Acto, and it's really important that I try to make this is actually going to be the seat part of the chair. I want to try and make it match the base as best as possible, of course with that back 1/4 inch cut off, because this will help keep the chair as straight as possible. And I'm going to make 2 of these because I want to double up the thickness of the wood. Again, you can buy thicker wood if you would like to, but this is just what I had and might as well use what I have. I'm going to use tacky glue to put those 2 pieces together, and then use clamps to hold it together while it dries. Sorry about my voice, I'm still recovering from last week, it feels like. Now I'm going to be creating 4 pieces out of that same 1/4 inch square dowel, and each of them is going to be 2 3/4 inches long. These are what's going to create the legs for the chair. Again, before I put them together, I want to make sure that I sand them to give them a worn, aged look. I just don't want them to have like really square edges and look like new pieces of wood. Once I have them sanded, I can add glue to 2 sides that are on like a corner of the chair, and I'm going to carefully place them into those gaps that we created in the chair base, and I'm going to do this for all 4 sides. The back part of the chair should have those longer pieces sticking past the legs, and that's because we're going to put another support back there. So that's why there's pieces sticking out of the back a little bit further. So what you can see at the bottom of the video is the front of the chair, and at the top of the video is the back of the chair. The next piece I'm going to cut is out of the 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch dowel, and I am going to cut it I'm just marking the distance between the two legs that I've already glued on. So I'm not measuring it, I'm just marking the distance. And I am going to also put a mark that's 1 3/4 inches up from my cutting surface, and that is where I'm going to add these supports in between the legs of the chair. This is just going to continue to make my chair stronger, and it's also going to be the place where I set down the seat of the chair. So I've done that on both the front 2 legs and the back 2 legs. Now I'm going to just make sure that I line up my seat. It's not going on the bottom here. I'm just trying to make sure that I have it lined up as best as possible. I try to keep things square, but it doesn't always work that way. But as long as I know that I have it lined up correctly, it should fit perfectly in between all 4 legs and on top of the 2 supports that we just added in. And so far it looks like it's working. Once I've dry fit it, I can take my tacky glue and add any place where the chair seat is going to touch the 4 chair legs on the side. Because you want your electric chair to be comfy, of course, right? You need to add the armrests. For this part, I'm using the 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch dowel, and I'm just setting it on top of the 2 previously cut leg supports, and I'm just going to mark it out so that it's a little bit longer than needed for this area. This is going to have, so it's just going to look like it has a little bit of an overhang for that arm support. That's just kind of a typical chair feature. Then I'm going to take the top part of it and round it out by sanding it so it has a little bit of a curve on the top part of the armrest. So it's kind of like so that the fingers can curl over the edge of the armrest. It's just a little bitty detail, not necessary, but I like to add those in when I can. And of course I made 2 of these, 1 for each side of the chair, and then I secured it with some tacky glue. Now I need to create the footrest because electric chairs are typically oversized. They do have a footrest so that the person sitting in the chair has a place to put their feet and they don't just dangle. So I'm cutting a piece from the 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch dowel and putting it across the bottom, just measuring how big it should be against the chair and putting that piece in. And then I'm adding another smaller piece. This one I think is maybe like 1 inch or so wide, and this is just going to be a little bit extra support for the footrest, and I'm gluing those both onto the front of the chair. You can kind of decide how high up you want the footrest. Then I'm going to cut a piece out of the basswood plank, and it's going to be 1 1/4 inch by 1/2 inch, and again I'm going to double this up. So once I like the size of the footrest, I'm going to put it just glue it back onto the basswood plank, and then I can cut again, so now I have a double thick piece of basswood. Similarly to the way I did the seat, I'm going to clamp it for just a short time so it can dry, and then sand it before I put it onto the chair. I'm just going to add some tacky glue and then glue it so that it lines up with the back of the support piece that we put on there, and it just makes this little footrest. It's not anything fancy, but it does add to that electric chair look. I'm going to go back to my 1/4 inch square dowel, and this is going to be the back piece support that will sit on the extended base that we have coming out of the back of the chair. It is 5 3/4 inches long. Once I have that cut and sanded, I can add glue to the back of the base and also a little bit to the back of the seat. I try to line it up so it's centered as best as possible, and then just glue it straight onto the chair. Once that's dry and secure, I can add the back cross piece that goes at the top. In order to get the correct size for this, I'm just going to lay the craft wood across the arms of the chair and then mark so that it's the same exact width. Then I can cut it, and this piece is going to be glued onto the face of the back piece like so. It's important for this step that you center it the best that you can so that the back support of this chair ends up looking as straight as possible. Now I'm going to take again the 1/4 inch by 8 inch dowel and set it on top of the back of the armrest and push it up against the piece we just glued on. Then I can mark where I need to cut it off and use my easy cutter to cut it, and it should fit perfectly to create the back support of the chair. I'm going to do this for both sides and then add it on with tacky glue. It's going to be glued on the top of the arm and the back of the cross piece that we previously added. Here's how one side looks, and then I add the same thing to the other side. Now I need to create another cross piece out of the 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch wood, and it is going to be 1 3/8 inch long. And I'm going to lay the chair on the back and then try to glue this piece about 1 inch from the top of the chair. Again, I want to try and get this as straight as possible so that the end result is as straight as possible. I've got a small ruler here, and I'm going to mark 3/4 inches from the back seat, from the back of the seat wood piece, and then I'm going to mark that line straight across the seat. This is going to give us a place for us to know where the next 3 pieces need to land. From the 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch dowel, I'm going to cut 3 pieces that are slightly longer than the length from the seat to the cross piece we previously cut. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going back and forth, sanding at an angle each piece until it fits underneath the cross piece, and then the other end fits along that line. So it should look something like this. So the one end fits right underneath the cross piece and the other end fits along that line. And I'm going to add 3 of those. 1 in the middle and 2 on each side. They should all line up against that line we marked on the chair. So this is it. This is the final wood build for this chair. It is now going to be time to paint it. In order for it to be a very dark brown, I'm going to start with a layer of black paint. This is going to give it a really dark base for me to paint on top of. And in between painting the black and the brown, I am going to use sandpaper to sand over the layer of black paint. The reason for this when you're working with wood is if you do a layer of acrylic paint, it often makes the fibers in the wood stand up, which gives you a very rough finish, and I want this to be a little bit smoother. So between each layer of paint I do a little bit of sanding, and that helps the fibers lay back down on the wood. Now I'm adding my layer of brown paint, and as you can see I have a really dark brown finish to this chair. And I can add more aging later, but this is a really good start to do the next steps on. And I did remember I wanted to do my nails for each video. I've been failing, but anyway, I've got green nails now. I'm now switching over to working on the switch panel that goes with the electric chair. I'm working with the 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch dowel, and I need 7 pieces that are each 3 inches long. This is what's going to make up our panel. Again, for this I'm going to be sanding each piece so that I can define the grooves in between each piece of wood. That kind of makes it look more like a homemade panel, like someone kind of put this all together, and maybe Wednesday made her very own switch panel to be exactly how she likes it. In the same process I did for the base of the chair, I'm using tacky glue and gluing the sides of each piece together. And I didn't do this the first time around, but after they're glued together and while the glue is still a little bit wet, I do pick it up and then kind of put the side of it onto my board and kind of squish it down to make sure that it is as straight as possible. So you can do that for the base of your chair as well to help out a bit. I did paint it in the very same fashion I did for the chair so that the wood matches. To create all the wiry bits and the panel pieces, I'm going to need some scrap mat board, some scrap cardstock. I'm going to need this skinnier piece of wood, which is an 1/8 inch by a 1/16 inch. You can also cut this out of mat board if you don't want to buy an extra dowel. And then I will need some medium gauge wire and some really thin wire. And I don't know what the gauges are for these because they're scrap pieces that I had laying around. I also like that they're different colors, but you can kind of do what you want. This is not going to be an electrical tutorial because I have no idea what I'm doing, honestly. Then I have one of these little glass jars. You can get these at Hobby Lobby. They come with a cork, but I take the cork out. I'm also using an earring finding that make sure you have one that has a hook on the bottom, and then some embroidery thread, and this is going to be what wraps around our panel handle. This is where you can get a little bit creative with your wire. Really, I just looked at some pictures and tried to make an impression of what I think the wires would look on an electric chair. This, of course, is not supposed to be accurate. It's just supposed to be kind of the look of electricity and wires surrounding this chair. I'm starting with the medium silver wire. I put a hook at one end using some pliers, and I'm just going to cut it so that it goes down to the back of the chair on one side and then kind of like arches over the top, because eventually this is going to hold our headpiece or our little electrical hat, I guess, and so I want to make sure I make it long enough. The part with the loop on the end I want to put at the back of the chair, and then I'm just going to start wrapping it around. Again, there's no rhyme or reason, but because the back piece of this chair is probably going to be the strongest piece on the chair, that's what I'm using to wrap this wire around. And you just kind of want to make it look secure. Well, you want it to be secure, and like I said, we're just making the impression of wires surrounding this chair. So I have this hook bit that goes over the top, and that's where we're going to be hanging the electrical hat piece. Now I'm taking the thinner copper wire, and this I'm going to be wrapping around something that is round. I just happen to have this round dowel. You can use a pin or anything round that you have just sitting at your desk. Make sure you knock the chair over in the process. But wrap the entire thing around whatever you have, and you will get a spiral similar to this. This also kind of helps with the impression of electrical wires, because this wire is a different color and it's curled. It just kind of gives that electric chair look, I think. What I did is I slid half of it over the silver wire that we already have on there, and then I let the rest of it go down the back freely, and then put the bottom part through the loop we created at the bottom when we first started. You can also pull it so that it stretches out a little bit if you feel like you need some more length to it. Now I'm going to take my earring finding and I'm going to bend it so that the top part of the earring piece is now a loop. So I should have a loop, a bigger loop on the top and the smaller loop that already existed on the bottom. I'm going to take the initial medium silver wire and create a loop, and then slip the earring finding that we just worked on over it. So now I have this piece hanging down. To create the metal hat that goes onto the electrical chair, I'm using the cardstock, and I'm going to use a 1 3/4 inch circle for the big part, and then for the smaller circle I am using a 1/2 inch diameter circle. I'm going to cut this out using scissors for the outside and then X-Acto for the inside. You can do X-Acto for both if you want, that's just how I did it. And then I'm going to cut a slit in one side of the circle. This is going to allow me to move it to create a cone shape. Once you get the shape you like, you can cut off any excess paper, and then all you need to do is add some tacky glue and then glue down the side so that you have a permanent cone shape. This is what's going to make the little headpiece for the electric chair. To create a finishing touch for the hat, I want an 1/8 inch strip of cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and cut 2 of these because we will need an 1/8 inch strip of cardstock for the electrical panel as well. So just put that off to the side. For this piece, I am using that 1/8 inch strip of cardstock, and I am just going to add glue around the edge and then start to press the piece down. This just gives an edge. It's an extra little touch. If you're not interested in this part, it's not necessary to the integrity of the chair, but I think it just gives it a nice little finishing touch. To create some holes in the hat, I'm going to put a paper towel behind it so I don't poke my fingers, and then I'm going to take my X-Acto blade and I'm going to make 2 holes, one on either side across from each other. This is going to help me attach it to the chair. The holes just need to be big enough for that medium silver wire to fit through. To paint the hat, I'm going to use a base layer of gray and then a top layer of silver metallic paint. And this is what I always do to make paper look metallic. I just do the base layer and then the metallic paint on top of it. Because metallic paint is typically pretty translucent, you want to have a base coat. Now I'm adding in just a short piece of that silver medium wire. I tried to cut it like a straight piece, and this is what's going to attach to that tiny earring finding that we have. So I'm just going to put the wire in one of the holes, go through that bottom loop of the earring finding, and then come out the other side, and this is how we start to attach the hat. Here is a closer up view, but because I don't like how it is sliding around, I do want to make sure that I secure it a little bit more. So on the sides of that straight piece of wire that we put through the hat, I'm just going to bend up the sides so it is a U shape, and then I'm going to lay it down flat against the paper. I'm also going to add some Gorilla Glue where the earring finding touches the wire, and this is going to help it kind of stay in place and not move around so much. I also added some glue where the wire touched the paper on top of the hat so that the hat stays still. And then finally I took some of that copper wire, I put it down through the hole and glued that on the inside of the hat so that everything stays in place. Now it looks like there's wires attached straight into the electrical hat. Now I have some watered down brown paint, and I'm just going to age this so it looks like it's been well used and worn over the years. My last step for wiring up the chair itself is I'm going to take quite a bit of this thin copper wire, and I'm just going to start wrapping it around the arms of the chair. Again, as I said earlier, I don't know anything about wiring an electric chair for real, so I looked at some pictures and I just kind of guessed on how a very old electric chair might have worked. Maybe some wires that actually the people's skin is touching. I don't really know. Also, an optional thing would be to add leather straps. I did not end up adding those to my original or this one. I also secured all the wires with E6000 glue. Now I'm going to be adding some of the paneling details to the electrical panel. Out of mat board, I am going to cut a piece that is 1 inch by 3/4 inch, and this is going to be what actually has our switch, and this is going to be in the lower left hand corner. So I'm just going to start just kind of laying things out so I know how they look. Next, I'm going to be cutting another piece that is it's the same length, but then I just cut it a little bit skinnier, and it's just going to be another metal piece that's sticking out. You can kind of cut it to size so that it looks right on your panel. Next, I'm taking that really skinny piece of wood, and I'm going to cut 3 pieces that are 5/8 inch in length, and then I'm going to cut one piece that is shorter, 3/8 in length. This is what's going to create our switch handle. Now the way I'm going to glue them together is kind of like the symbol pi, where it has the piece at the top and then two legs hanging down, and you'll see this, but all of the three pieces that were 5/8 inch long, these are getting glued together first. So this is how they end up looking, and I want to let that dry just a little bit before I add the handle on top. This is really fiddly, but in the end I think it looks good. So I'm going to add the 3/8 inch piece to the top now to create the actual handle that Wednesday or any other family member might pull on. To add the glass bottle, I'm going to add some E6000 glue to the back of the bottle and put it in the upper right hand corner of the panel. This is where our wires are going to go into, kind of like a mad scientist type look to it, where the wires go into glass jars and I don't know, something like that. This is the 1/8 inch strip of cardstock that I created earlier. I went ahead and painted it with the gray and metallic silver paint combo that I did for the hat. While I was doing that, I just went ahead and painted it. What I'm going to do is lay it over the top of the jar that I already glued down, and I'm going to bend it into shape. I want it to look like a bracket that is helping the bottle stay held on to the electrical panel. This can just be glued on with tacky glue because it's not really holding any weight. It's just kind of an illusion. And I'm actually going to make 2 of these so it looks like it's super extra secure. And of course I have to do the same painting method to these 2 pieces because we want them to look metal as well. So I'm going to do the base in gray and then a top coat of silver, and then I'm doing the same thing to the handle also. This takes a little bit more finesse because it is a very small piece. Now that we have all our pieces, I'm going to lay the handle on top of the plate that we just painted. I'm going to mark out how far down I need to create very thin slits. We want this to look as though the handle fits into these slits. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I marked out how far down I want them to go, then I'm just cutting straight lines up so that I have 2 slits that the handle will fit into. Once I have those cut, I connect the panel to the wood panel at the back with some tacky glue. Before I glue the handle itself down, I want to make sure and put the embroidery thread over the handle, because when you're pulling on the electrical panel, you don't want your hand to touch the metal. So I'm just going to add some glue to the part that's sticking up and use the embroidery thread and wrap that around several times. And I will end up aging that. It does look really, really bright red at the moment, but I will age it so that it looks a little bit more like it belongs on this aged old electrical panel. Then I can add some glue to the bottom parts of the handle prongs, and they're going to slide into the slits that we cut for the panel that we glued onto the panel. How many times can I say panel in this tutorial? I'm trying to make sure that it sits up kind of at an angle so it's sticking out from the board a little bit. This will make it look more like it's a handle that's just ready to be pulled downwards. I'm also going to take a little bit of this curled copper wire, and it is going to go up inside of the glass bottle that we've already glued down. I want to make sure that I glue it down onto the panel, and I'm making sure it goes in between like one of the cracks of the boards. That just kind of makes it a little bit more secure, that it's not like sliding around. I'm going to add some tacky glue to the wire and then immediately add tacky glue to the back of the metal piece, or it's not metal, the mat board piece that we painted to look like metal. And then I'm going to kind of put that on top of the wire. This is kind of to make it look like the power goes from the handle to the metal to the wire to the glass jar, and then eventually to the electrical chair. That was my thought process. If there's any electrical chair experts out there, I'd love to have a mock-up of how it really works, but this is how it works for this project. Now I'm taking a very sharp tool and I'm pushing into any place I want it to look like there are going to be screws or nails. And then I'm going to take some watered down black paint and just gently go over those areas. The black paint will kind of go into the holes that I made and make it look like there is a screw or nail inside those panel pieces. And I'm just in general going to age everything up. So here you go. Here is the electrical panel and electrical chair. You can see the wire goes into the glass jar to connect everything together. So that's it for this week's tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As you probably saw from the title, I am doing a giveaway. I'm going to be giving away this electric chair and panel that you just saw me make, because I don't need two. This is more of like to show you how I made the first one. There are a few changes in this one, but yeah, so I thought it'd be fun to do a giveaway. It doesn't matter where you live, anybody is welcome to enter. All you need to do is make sure you're subscribed, like the video, and leave a comment below. You can comment anything. Let me know if you've seen the recent Addams Family movie, which movie is your favorite. Let me know what you plan to dress up as for Halloween. Anything is welcome in the comment section. Anything nice is welcome in the comment section. And I will do a random comment generator to choose the winner. I will announce the winner in my video that goes up on Halloween night, so you have 2 weeks to enter. I will make sure and let you know when time is up so you don't get your hopes up if the giveaway is already done. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!